1. Biological processes such as photosynthesis, respiration, and decomposition take up and release carbon and oxygen. 2. Geochemical processes such as erosion and volcanic activity release carbon dioxide to the atmosphere and oceans. 3. Mixed biogeochemical processes such as the burial and decomposition of dead organisms and their conversion under pressure into coal and petroleum store carbon underground. 4. Human activities such as mining, cutting, and burning forests and burning fossil fuels release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Scientists identified these processes decades ago, but they are still actively investigating them. For example, how many carbon moves through each part of the cycle? How do other parts of the carbon cycle respond to changes in atmospheric carbon dioxide? How much carbon dioxide can the ocean absorb? Later in this unit, you will learn why answers to these questions are so important. In the atmosphere, carbon is present as carbon dioxide gas. Carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere by volcanic activity, by respiration, by human activities such as burning of fossil fuels and vegetation, and by the decomposition of organic matter. Plants take in carbon dioxide and use the carbon to build carbohydrates during photosynthesis. The carbohydrates are passed along food webs to animals and other consumers. In the ocean, carbon is also found, along with calcium and oxygen, in calcium carbonate, which is formed by many marine organisms. Calcium carbonate can also be formed chemically in certain marine environments. This chalky, carbon-based component accumulates in marine sediments and in the bones and shells of organisms. Eventually, these compounds break down and the carbon returns to the atmosphere. The nitrogen cycle. All organisms require nitrogen to make amino acids, which in turn are used to build proteins. Many different forms of nitrogen occur naturally in the biosphere. Nitrogen gas makes up 78% of Earth's atmosphere. Nitrogen-containing substances such as ammonia, nitrate ions, and nitrate ions are found in waste produced by many organisms and in dead and decaying organic matter. Nitrogen also exists in several forms in the ocean and other large water bodies. Human activity adds nitrogen to the biosphere in the form of nitrate, a major component of plant fertilizers. Although nitrogen gas is the most abundant form of nitrogen on Earth, only certain types of bacteria can use this form directly. Such bacteria live in the soil and roots of plants called legumes, convert nitrogen gas into ammonia in a process known as nitrogen fixation. Other bacteria in the soil convert ammonia into nitrates and nitrates. Once these products are available, producers can use them to make proteins. Consumers then eat the producers and then reuse the nitrogen to make their own proteins. When organisms die, decomposers return nitrogen to the soil as ammonia. The ammonia may be taken up again by producers. Other soil bacteria convert nitrates into nitrogen gas in a process called denitrification. This process releases nitrogen into the atmosphere once again. The phosphorus cycle. Phosphorus is essential to living organisms because it forms part of important life-sustaining molecules such as DNA and RNA. Although phosphorus is of great biological importance, it is not very common in the biosphere. Unlike carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen, phosphorus does not enter the atmosphere. Instead, phosphorus remains mostly on land in rock and soil minerals and in ocean sediments. There, phosphorus exists in the form of inorganic phosphate. As the rocks and sediments gradually wear down, phosphate is released. On land, some of the phosphate washes into rivers and streams, where it dissolves. The phosphate eventually makes its way to the oceans, where it is used by marine organisms. Some phosphate stays on land and cycles between organisms and the soil. When plants absorb phosphate from the soil or from water, the plants bind the phosphate into organic compounds. Organic phosphate moves through the food web from producers to consumers and to the rest of the ecosystem. Nutrient limitation. Ecologists are often interested in the primary productivity of an ecosystem, which is the rate at which organic matter is created by producers. One factor that controls the primary productivity of an ecosystem is the amount of available nutrients. If a nutrient is in short supply, it will limit an organism's growth. When an ecosystem is limited by a single nutrient that is scarce or cycles very slowly, this substance is called a limiting nutrient. Because they are well aware of this phenomenon, Farmers apply fertilizers to their crops to boost their productivity. Fertilizers usually contain three important nutrients: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. These nutrients help plants grow larger and more quickly than they would in unfertilized. The open oceans of the world can be considered nutrient-poor environments compared to the land. Seawater contains at most only 0.00005% nitrogen, or 1/10,000th of the amount typically found in soil. In the ocean and other saltwater environments, nitrogen is often the limiting nutrient. In some areas of the oceans, however, silica and even iron can be the limiting nutrient. In streams, lakes, and freshwater environments, phosphorus is typically the limiting nutrient. When an aquatic ecosystem receives a large input of limiting nutrient, for example, runoff from heavily fertilized fields, the result is often an immediate increase in the amount of algae and other producers. This result is called the algal bloom. Why do algal blooms occur? There are more nutrients available, so the producers can grow and reproduce more quickly. If there are not enough consumers to eat the excess algae, conditions can become so favorable for growth that algae cover the surface of the water. Algal blooms can sometimes disrupt the equilibrium of an ecosystem. Chapter 3-3, Section Assessment. Number 1. Key Concept. How does the way that matter flows through an ecosystem differ from the way that Answer. Unlike the one-way flow of energy, matter is recycled within and between ecosystems. Number 2. Key Concept. Why do living organisms need nutrients? Answer. Every living organism needs nutrients to build tissues and carry out essential life functions. Like water, nutrients are passed between organisms through biogeochemical cycles. Number 3. Describe the path of nitrogen through its biogeochemical cycle. Answer. Bacteria which live in the soil and on the roots of plants called legumes are one of the certain types of bacteria that can use the form of nitrogen directly. They convert nitrogen gas into ammonia in a process known as nitrogen fixation. Other bacteria in the soil convert ammonia into nitrates and nitrates. Once these products are available, producers can use them to make proteins. Consumers then eat the producers and reuse the nitrogen to make their own proteins. When organisms die, decomposers return nitrogen to the soil as ammonia. The ammonia may be taken up again by producers. Other soil bacteria convert nitrates into nitrogen gas in a process called denitrification. This process releases nitrogen into the atmosphere once again. Number 4. Explain how a nutrient can be a limiting factor. Answer. If a nutrient is in short supply, it will limit an organism's growth. When an ecosystem is limited by a single nutrient that is scarce or cycles very slowly, this substance is called a limiting nutrient. But limiting nutrients vary in each type of. For example, in the ocean and other saltwater environments, nitrogen is often the limiting nutrient. But in some areas of the ocean, however, silica and even iron can be the limiting nutrient. In streams, lakes, and freshwater environments, phosphorus is typically the limiting nutrient. This was Monica Saab from Hopkins 9F Biology class. Thanks for listening!